Across history, every sword has picked up legends, and a lot of nonsense. Some blades were turned into invincible superweapons by movies, video games, and even fan culture. In this video, we're not just naming swords, we're killing myths. By the end, you'll see that every famous blade is less magical and more specialized than you were told. And in some cases, pop culture got them almost completely wrong. Stay with me, because some of these myths go straight against what you've probably believed for years. Let's get into it.
Short sword. Too small to be dangerous. Myth. The short sword is a weak beginner weapon, only useful if you can't get a real sword. Reality. The short sword wasn't a noob option. It was designed for specific jobs. Tight formations, shield walls, and cramped interiors where long blades are a liability. In those situations, a short sword can be faster and safer to use than a longer blade. The real limitation isn't that it's weak, it's that its range is specialized. Put it in an open field against longer weapons, and it suddenly looks much worse. The myth comes from games that treat it as a training weapon, when in reality, it was often the standard weapon for professional soldiers. Arming sword, the ultimate knight sword. Myth. The arming sword was the knight's main battle weapon and could handle anything. Reality, the arming sword was more of a sidearm than a main battlefield solution. Its job was to back up the shield, spear, or lance, not replace them. It's a solid generalist, good cut, decent thrust, reliable in many situations. But that does everything okay role is exactly what pop culture turns into does everything perfectly. Against heavy armor, it didn't hit as hard as a long sword or polearm, and once shields started disappearing, its advantages shrank fast.
The longsword is the perfect all-purpose weapon. Myth. The longsword is the perfect sword, great at everything, bad at nothing. Reality. Historical manuals treat the longsword like a technical toolkit, not a magic blade. It absolutely has reach, power, and versatility, but it also demands training and space. In alleys, staircases, or crowds, all that reach can backfire. You end up choking up on the blade, half-swording, or basically turning it into a metal lever. It shines in the right context, but if it were truly perfect, no one would have bothered with pikes, poleaxes, or even simple short swords.
Greatsword. Massive, slow, and impossibly heavy. Myth. Greatswords were ridiculous anime slabs of metal that only giants could lift. Reality. Real greatswords were big, but not 80-pound iron doors. Most weighed in a range a trained fighter could absolutely handle. The real drawback wasn't that they were unusably heavy, it was commitment. Every swing is a serious decision. If you miss or overextend, recovering in time is hard. They're fantastic for breaking formations and controlling space, but once someone slips inside their reach, the advantage crashes. So, no, not Cloud Strife's sword, but also not some impossible fantasy weight either. Broadsword. All power, no finesse. Myth. The broadsword is just a crude hacking blade for brute force. Reality. The broadsword hits hard, yes, that wide blade is made for serious cuts. But historical fencing with broadswords involves timing, footwork, and technique. It's not just random chopping. The real trade-off is drag and recovery time. Bigger blade, more steel, more momentum to control. Against refined, thrust-oriented weapons like rapiers or smallswords, those extra fractions of a second matter. It's dangerous and brutal, but not stupid. Backsword. Just a cheap, worse broadsword. Myth. The backsword is a low-quality, budget broadsword for poor soldiers. Reality, it was cheaper to make, thick spine, single edge, but that doesn't automatically make it bad. The hidden trade-off is in options. That single edge slightly reduces cutting angles and backhand attacks, and the weight distribution can make fine, delicate work feel less agile than a well-made double-edged sword. So yes, it was often a mass-issue weapon, but that's about production needs, not trash-tier performance. Cutlass, a pirate superweapon. Myth. The cutlass was the perfect pirate sword, great in any fight, anywhere. Reality. The cutlass is a naval specialist. On a crowded, rolling ship with ropes, masts, and tight spaces, its short, curved design is perfect. On an open battlefield, very different story. Against spears, pikes, or even longer swords, its short reach is a major disadvantage. It isn't some universally superior blade. It's a tool built for close, chaotic shipboard combat. Scimitar, effortless armor cutter. Myth, scimitars could slice through armor like butter because of their curve. Reality, curved blades like the shamshir, kilij, and talwar are monsters against flesh and light armor, especially from horseback using draw cuts. But against solid plate armor, they lose a lot of bite. Straight, thrusting weapons had the advantage there. The curve that makes them deadly for slashing actually works against them when you're trying to drive into small armor gaps. They're stunningly effective in the right tactical scenario, not universal armor breakers. If you're hearing things about swords you've never seen in movies or games, pause for a second and hit subscribe. I'm always breaking down historical swords without the Hollywood filter. All right, back to the myths. Sabre, the perfect cavalry answer to everything. Myth, the sabre made cavalry unbeatable. Just give a soldier a sabre and put him on a horse. Reality, the sabre is optimized for cutting from horseback. It's fast, it bites hard, and it's great against lightly armored targets. But ride straight into a disciplined line of infantry with bayonets or pikes, and suddenly that curved cutter is meeting a wall of points. Its forte isn't piercing dense formations, it's exploiting mobility and chaos. Also, many military sabers were compromises, designed to be tough, cheap, and mass-produced, not perfectly balanced art pieces.
Falchion, a peasant's cleaver, not a real sword. Myth, the falchion was just a crude machete for poor, untrained fighters. Reality? Falchions look like oversized cleavers, and that visual fooled a lot of people. In reality, they can be sophisticated cutting tools with serious stopping power. The forward-weighted design absolutely smashes through light armor and bone. The trade-off is agility. It's harder to change direction quickly or fence delicately compared to a more balanced sword. It earned a peasant weapon reputation in some cultures, but that's more social class bias than real performance. Katana, the sharpest, most perfect sword ever forged. Myth, the katana can cut through anything and is the best sword in history, full stop. Reality, the katana is beautifully optimized for cutting unarmored or lightly armored targets. Within that role, it's excellent. Outside that role, it's just as limited as any other specialized weapon. Against heavy plate, the edge can chip, roll, or simply fail to bite. Many traditional techniques rely more on precise targeting, deflection, and grappling than wild, cut-through steel swings. It's also maintenance-heavy and demands serious training. Amazing weapon, just not the invincible anime lightsaber people imagine. Rapier, only for fancy duels, useless in real fights. Myth, the rapier was a gentleman's toy, good for duels, bad for real combat. Reality, the rapier is a specialist. It dominates in reach and thrusting in one-on-one fights, especially in civilian and urban contexts. Where it struggles is exactly where people misuse it in their imagination, against multiple opponents, heavy armor, or brutal battlefield chaos. It's not that it's weak, it's that it's tuned for a very specific social and tactical environment. In that environment, it's terrifying. Sidesword, a confusing, transitional oddball. Myth, the sidesword is just a weird in-between sword with no real purpose. Reality, the sidesword sits between the medieval arming sword and the rapier because warfare and civilian combat were changing. People needed something that could both cut and thrust in crowded streets and duels. Its jack-of-both-trades nature is often painted as a flaw, but it was actually solving a transitional problem. The limitation is that once weapons and tactics became more specialized, it was outshined by blades that fully committed to either pure cutting or pure thrusting. Smallsword, a toy rapier. Myth, the smallsword is just a tiny, weaker rapier for fashion and show. Reality, the smallsword is extremely focused. It's a fast, precise dueling tool in a world where heavy armor was fading from everyday life. Its lightness and narrow blade make it devastating in the context it was built for, civilian duels with minimal protection. Put it back onto a medieval battlefield with armor, arrows, and cavalry, and yes, it looks ridiculous. That doesn't make it a toy. It just means it belongs to a very specific time and culture. Executioner's sword, a giant monster of war. Myth, executioner's swords were brutal battlefield weapons used to crush enemies. Reality, almost the opposite. Executioner's swords were purpose-built tools for executions, wide blade, blunt tip, weight set up for a single decisive downward cut. No thrusting, awkward defense, not designed for parries, feints, or prolonged fights. As a combat weapon, it's nearly useless compared to real battlefield swords.
Hollywood loves the dramatic look, but its job was grim, controlled, and ceremonial, not chaotic combat. Hanger sword, a random low-tier sidearm. Myth. The hanger was just a cheap throwaway sword for soldiers who couldn't get anything better. Reality, the hanger was a practical secondary weapon for infantry and naval troops, short, handy, and simple to produce. It wasn't supposed to compete with big battlefield swords and open formations. Its job was to be there when things got close and messy, in forests, on ships, and fortifications. Judging it as a primary battlefield blade is like judging a backup pistol against a sniper rifle. The real pattern behind all these myths. When you line up all these swords, a clear pattern appears. Pop culture loves absolutes: best sword, worst sword, armor cutter, useless toy. History is about contexts, tactics, armor, terrain, culture, and training. Every sword you've seen today is incredible somewhere and disappointing somewhere else. If you want to keep stripping away the Hollywood myths and actually understand how these swords were really used, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next episode. And before you go, tell me in the comments, which myth shocked you the most, and which sword do you think is the most overhyped in pop culture? Your answer might inspire the next video.